to give him that lane dominant style and say, we trust you to try and give us a win with the champions that you're comfortable on.
So there's a bit of mirroring going on here with the series that they play in Knight's Road and this one, where Rumble was also locked in for Soboro, something that we'll be tracking throughout the night. I did notice that the Jarvan was taken away, but that game warping pick that we saw in the first game of their last series against each other was Alistar, and that's worth thinking about as well, especially as an option for Jwei later in the draft. Nobody wants to lock in Alistar's first pick, but it becomes a pretty distinct possibility later on, especially when you already have a Rumble topside and you want a little bit of extra tankiness against things like Xin Zhao and Ornn.
And we can see the Rise hover here coming out from Rookie. This would be double AP solo laner, so if you lock something like a, I don't even know, like the Varus and the Yunara are banned, but any really high DPS 80 carry, I think that IG are going to be a really high damage team just right out of the gate because your profile is so diverse and you've got really hard late game scaling already just with the Rumble and the Rise. But I imagine they'll probably just decide, hey, we're going to pick our full top side here. The response to the Jarvan likely going to be, yeah, that Wukong, especially with the Vi banned away. Not Jarvan response, Xin Zhao response.
Yeah, Wukong does function really well into things like Xin Zhao and Ornn because he's able to provide peel, which is the #1 thing that you're looking for IG. Obviously, Wukong brings a lot of engage to the table as well, but he's so flexible in terms of his role in team fights, and that actually should bring us back to the matchup that we highlighted at the start of this, which was the Wei Guwon matchup. I think that in this particular case, Wei has a lot of plates to keep spinning in terms of Wukong and the amount that he's able to spin. One of those is going to be in the team fights, where he's going to have to be both playing a big part of the engage and taking care of Photic and Jwei.
Wukong traditionally, though, not known as a champion that hits the ground running, which is contradictory to what we said Wei really likes to do in a lot of the successful games that IG have played out over the course of the winter split. Wukong traditionally really spikes once he gets that Cyclone, really spikes once he gets that Trinity Force, doesn't have a lot to do, and isn't a huge threat until either of those breakpoints come through for him. So I am curious how Wei is going to operate on this champion that doesn't really share a style that he has been known for over the course of IG's run so far. But overall, both teams just deciding to lock in their top sides. I am a little bit concerned about NIP's damage profile, at least in the early phases of this game, as well as their lack of lockdown. I think that you need to pair something with heavy CC with the Xin Zhao so you can get a bunch of that value off with that early game damage that he provides.
Okay, I see. I see the early game because you were like, you have to bring CC, and I was like, my brother, they have an Ornn. Like this is
gonna be topside. He's gonna be chilling.
That's true. So actually, looking for early game CC does make the Rakan make a lot of sense, right? You pair that up with Xin Zhao, and all of a sudden you have very easy early access to helping this guy out.
Yeah, it makes it really easy to just link up with him and have that confluence of engage open for care in the late game. They are saving 80 carry at 4 last, so putting a lot of priority on Assum getting a comfortable matchup here in this series, which I think is very wise, especially if IG lock in this Rel Misfortune duo. This is a pretty prominent duo between Photic and Jwei. They like to go for this combo, as I think that IG, like we said, very good at the team very good at the early games, but the team fights are where it kind of falls apart. So if you can get this comp that is basically just click R and sync your ultimates together, I think it really dumbs down and simplifies IG's more questionable point in their gameplay thus far. But NIP now, with that last pick, I don't like this. You have so much lockdown on IG. Jin just feels like he is being sent to a slaughterhouse if he gets locked down by any of these abilities right now. I could see it being like a decent angle if Zhuo can be like freed up to roam around with Guwon, but even then, I think it's really, really difficult to get full value out of this Jhin. Even with like the Deadly Flourish, like it's hard to proc it on champions like Rakan.
It's crazy that they're picking Jhin again, by the way. You know, when we were thinking about, oh, you know, what champions like Rumble, for example, were picked in the first game of last year's, yeah, NIP picked Jhin in the first game the last time these two teams played each other in Knight's Road. But it's worth noting that that was a pretty different composition that he was picking Jhin with. He was picking Jhin with a Bard, he was picking Jhin with a Ryze, Qiyana, and a Varus top lane. A composition that already had a bunch of damage and needed a little bit more lockdown. I don't think that that's true of this composition. This composition has a tank top side, has a Rakan. You can use a little bit more damage than a Jhin, me think.
Yeah. The early game damage profile rests solely on Guwon's ability to impact the map early, and I do think that he's been successful at doing that over the course of the winter split, so I do have faith in him to be able to transition that proactivity into a winning late game where eventually the rest of his team will take over. But if he gets behind, you might have to start sounding the alarms for NIP as IG will take over in the team fights.
I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. Something may be wrong with my volume, because I don't hear any cheers, any sounds at all. I'm gonna investigate that.
No.
I mean, I don't even hear game sound right now. So if you didn't hear Gyos, check if you heard game sound. As it stands, we're just gonna assume that everybody cheered, because if I was in the stadium, I would be cheering. Because this roster,
I'd be yelling.
Oh yeah, yes. I'm
like,
yes, good.
If nobody is shouting, like I feel like I have to you know, kind of double time it at that point. I have to go like twice as hard with the volume because everyone else is so dang quiet.
Normally not something we have to worry about in the LPL, I will say. Crowds
Certainly.
Very, very good about cheering, about supporting their own teams, and for right now, IG pretty good at managing the early game. With Misfortune and Rel, you are expected to have a pretty good time, especially in the first couple levels, and really at all stages in the game. Misfortune is just such a good time of managing herself in the lane. It really is about teamfight positioning, where things can get a little challenging.
And Photic as well is going to be able to leverage just a little bit of that Misfortune lane bullying with that extra bit of damage coming in from the auto as well. Will give them a good amount of priority and give at least safety for the time being over to Jwei to just clear his camps. I think at the end, Jwei is also probably going to place a ward on the enemy Gromp, so they'll have an idea of if Guwon tries to look for any impact to bail out Assum and Zhuo, who I expect will inevitably be under their tower for the foreseeable future.
Wow, this lane, I know that we're not talking about a first blood or nothing, but this lane sucks for Hoya. Getting forced to back now with a freeze being pulled off on him by Soboro like this? Again. Oh my god. Oh my, this is disgusting.
No. I actually thought maybe Soboro was going to look for a flash kill there with the overheat, but he opts not to. This is an absolutely disgusting situation, though, that Hoya has found himself in. Luckily, though, Guwon does clear out his camps, but Jwei, I think, is really smart to just go on the other end and say, hey, I could trap Guwon in this situation.
Soboro can roam down as well. Jwei knows that and flashes right on top of him. Soboro's coming for this, and Rookie's already there. Guwon, who we worried about getting behind, got taken out, and genuinely, Quax, if Soboro had just straight up killed Hoya, it would have been better for NIP than this.
And really good early game from Jwei. He's going to try and continue the aggression, though.
Well, not going to be as easy, since Zhuo fortunately has roamed up, and lane priority helps out NIP in this case with an early back from their Jhin, almost killing Jwei, but not quite. And Jwei knew it. Jwei was confident, I like to think. In my head canon.
Good roam by Zhuo as well. Not only catching the gank there from Jwei, but also staying to allow Care some extra safety as he tries to push in this wave under the turret to get the Azir on that back. But Jwei doesn't want to let this go. Will inevitably have to, though. But going back to that crab fight, really good recognition there from Wei on the Wukong to say, hey, I've got priority on the top side. I don't need to just handshake the crabs. I can intercept this Xin Zhao. And I just felt like a good play to get the ball rolling. Already Wei on a champion who, like we said, isn't known for their early game, is getting the ball rolling in the early game.
I am pleased to announce that I have solved my issue and can now hear the game and everything that goes along with it, hopefully. I maybe shouldn't have said everything. That does feel a little bit overzealous. Hubris has bested more than one man in history, but at least for now, I can hear a lot more than I did earlier, and that's exciting because we're about to likely start skirmishing a lot more after what we saw out of that early game, and perhaps the best example of that comes in the bot side, where we get a couple of stuns traded back and forth, a little bit of damage, and largely a trade that NIP start, and one that they would look to repeat as Dragon gets started up by IG in turn.
Yeah, on spawn as well. Wei wants to try getting this late game objective to a threatening position as soon as possible, just to give the scaling advantage over to their team, because both squads have a good amount of damage going into the late game. Obviously, we have Care on the Azir, we have Assum on the Jhin, but factoring in the ornaments from Hoya as well will give them that extra little bump in DPS should this game go long. And IG have some scaling of their own, the Rise, the Rumble, but want to make sure that the extra bump they get is in the Dragon Soul.
That'll really help them out, especially depending on what Dragon Soul it is. We know it's not really Infernal or Mountain, but you can get some pretty crazy sustain options for IG as well, and especially if we are able to run something like an Ocean Soul, which I know some people think is not perhaps the most powerful soul in League of Legends, but man, would it look good for a composition that is already supposed to just be playing into a comp that lacks a little bit of damage, shall we say. And again, early opinions, maybe Assum ends up blowing people up on Jhin, but I have my doubts.
He's got a 20 gold lead. Don't ever underestimate it. Could happen. I do think that Guwon has not been able to really find these opportunities that we were hoping for from him in this early game. Obviously, we are, you know, the game is still young, but Soboro is going to look for a dive with the rest of his team, realm warp over to the top side.
Hoya just doesn't have the mana to finish clearing out this wave effectively. Saves a little bit of it to try and turn the dive around, and that does not work. Second kill of the game going to IG once again as they use realm warp proactively, partnering Wei and Rookie up and taking a kill.
And I like that they gave the kill over to Rookie, because you can see that Care is going to try pushing in this wave, so Rookie won't be able to get the CS in this mid lane. No one is actually going to lose it, though, as Jwei with a really good roam is going to save it for Soboro. So overall, NIP don't actually lose anything anywhere for that trade up on the top side, and it sets them up really nicely to be at these grubs on spawn, which should be in about 30 seconds.
Both supports, considering whether they'll be there or not, you want to go down and make sure that your AD carries are okay, but you also got to be playing for the objectives, something that both will really want to do, especially once they hit level 6. I mean, big power spike, of course, for both supports who bring a lot of crowd control to the table, but
yeah,
you got to think about this from the AD carry perspective as well. Assum's level 6 is going to be really impactful when it comes to setting up the team for picks, which is mostly what he's going to have to do through the mid game, is play facilitator Jhin for a Xin Zhao who's already a little bit behind, and to keep Care safe more than anything.
And with Rakan not in the area to start up a fight here for NIP, it means that the engage would fall solely on Hoya, but he doesn't even have the Oran Horn, but Care's looking for a pick in the mid lane.
Yeah, you could always go for something like that. It does work out, gets at least the single summoner out of Rookie, but doesn't do much in the way of stopping the Void Grubs that do end up going over to IG. There's 2 early objectives for them, and Rookie, for free, forcing a flash out of Care.
And because of that, Guwon can't really look for a cross map. You could see that he was posturing to maybe steal away a camp from Wei, but Care being zoned away from his own lane, Rookie having Prio means that he can just rotate down there, so it affects the Xin Zhao as well, being able to get some of these early game advantages, even if it is just a camp. Anything helps at this point because Guwon really hasn't been able to leave his mark on this early game as the Xin Zhao. NIP haven't had many chances to be proactive so far here in game number 1, and that really hurts them, as like we have to keep reiterating, the late game scaling from IG really is nothing to scoff at.
The solo lanes are really hurting for Guwon's lack of autonomy in this game. Hoya not having a great time up against the Rumble, hasn't since minute 1. And the same thing true of Care, who we just saw flash away from a Ryze who simply walked at him. Rookie's not looking uncomfortable in this matchup by any margin, and Soboro up in the top side is having the time of his life in a Rumble v Tank matchup that there's no help for.
You know, hang on, so Trouble does have the flash, could go over the wall, but Xin Zhao is right there.
Jwei's on the way. Love saying that, but so is Guwon, and immediately gonna get some damage landed on him. Wind becomes lightning, does not connect, but Hoya does collect the kill. Will be a 1-for-1, however, as Jwei trades that back onto Guwon. Ultimately, a wave gets lost topside as well. It's not the most flawless play in the world, but as things go for NIP, perhaps it's not the worst.
Kara as well going to be able to pick up a plate, which will help him very granularly, but like I keep saying, anything helps for NIP's topside at this point. As you so aptly put, Dia, they are struggling so far in this game. The kill for Hoya will alleviate his struggles maybe a little bit, but I don't think that it is going to ease it completely. He already has that Spectre's Cowl, so just indexing more into that magic resist will allow him to tank more punish from the Rumble, but he still has a limit, and I think that Soboro with the Liandry's will easily be able to find that limit given enough time. Zhuo is walking very far up, just trying to get vision around this dragon. NIP desperately want to get this to tie up the Drake's.
Care gonna have to play pretty far forward to make sure that happens. Jwei knocked up pretty quickly and locked down. Actually could be picked off and has to flash away. Jwei in a similar position has to expend that summoner himself and now dodge out on the curtain call that does connect with him, but the bullet does not curve at the end to finish him off. However, it will do its job and secure NIP the dragon. Unfortunately, perhaps at the cost of their top laner, as Hoya gets roasted alive by Soboro. That matchup going from worse to worse again, I suppose.
Yep, worse to worser for the Ornn. Hoya definitely not having a good time in this game, though. Guwon, because of the nice engage and the nice damage onto Jwei, will be able to equalize the dragon count. So that scaling advantage not solely in the possession of IG, but it does feel like it is going to be harder for NIP to get a lot of these subsequent dragons if Soboro is able to take down this turret before that spawns, because it frees up the Rumble to move around. With a 1.2k gold lead, he is going to be hurting a lot of these squishier members on NIP's bot side once he gets freed up.
Completely completed Liandry's. One of the things that's sort of awkward about the Ornn Rumble matchup is that it's going to look better on our screens as the game goes on, because Hoya won't be at risk of dying as much. But the real threat here is not whether Hoya is dying, which is its own problem. It's how comfortable Soboro is, how free he is to move around the map, and that is only going to get worse as the game goes on. Hoya's not going to be able to just stand in Rumble's face for very long, even if he is much safer, and even that is being challenged as Rookie moves up the top side with Jwei. No Rumble, no problem. They want to go for the engage, and Hoya, he's got a bunch of magic resist, but against a Wukong, that does not matter one lick. Rookie collects another kill, and that is a great group up with a mid-jungle duo.
Yeah, easy side lane pickup there from Rookie. I really love how he's been using these Realm Warps over the course of this game just to further bully Hoya on this Ornn. But also great timing there on the Cyclone from Jwei. Just cancels out the Ornn Horn, denies the knockup, and IG further putting pressure on this top side, pulling all of NIP to respond, and that just frees up Soboro on this bot side. This Rumble continuing to just farm plates in this game.
For all those of you at home, just be aware that I know as I say this that I'm not calling the game. I'm not in any way predicting what the end of this game will be. However, I do want to acknowledge that this is already a very different game than what I had anticipated from IG, given how the last series went for both them in isolation against Weibo and against NIP. I think IG are looking a whole lot better based on the first 14 minutes of this one.
They are. They look a lot more confident. They look a lot more proactive. We're going to have to see that continue. There's going to be a Herald spawning in about 20 seconds here. Soboro isn't in the area, but neither is Hoya. And I think NIP, without that concrete frontliner of the Ornn, are going to find it really difficult to walk into that top side, especially if they don't have a firm hold on the vision. You look around that river, they only have a couple of wards in the area, so I do not think that they are really in any position to fight unless they can get this Ornn magically toward the top side, which likely won't be the case.
Rookie has to decide, and it's a pretty good decision, whether he goes for a little bit of threat on care or a little bit of threat on care's risk. Both of those things pretty easily accessible to a Rise as accelerated as he. Question becomes now, does that Rift Herald translate? NIP are here to challenge it, and Rift Herald is only about half HP, so they may very well get this, given that Soboro has stayed around the bot side. Perhaps IG go, you know what? We'd rather have a turret than the Herald.
I mean, giving more gold over to Soboro definitely could be the move, but he's channeling TP. It's very late, though, for IG, if I'm being completely honest.
Jwei can still go for this. We've extended an equalizer that more or less cuts straight down the middle, but Care gets sucked in by the Magnet Storm, and Soboro is absolutely here for it. Unfortunately, no members of NIP have fallen, and they are quickly turning things around on IG. Jwei is 1 HP right now, and while a bullet time does force NIP to split up their health bars low, they still manage to get away with the Rift Herald, and just a 1-for-1. Can IG change that? Photic chasing down Guwon. Rookie looking for Care, but nothing quite connecting to convert on these kills. Assum is low. Flash, Realm Warp. All right, we're making it a 1-for-2. We're making it a 1-for-2. Last auto from Photic secures that as the truth.
Rookie was determined to look for that second kill. He didn't care who it was. They were not going to go even in that trade. They really wanted to look for the fight win. All things considered, IG do get the better end of that fight over the Rift Herald, but it just felt like a really late TP there from Soboro. Just some indecisiveness costing them a maybe unnecessary amount of gold.
Another small skirmish. This one not over an objective, so nobody super hard committing to actually finish the fight. But like you say, that was, I don't know. This was almost in NIP's favor. Had they gotten the Rift Herald with just a 1-for-1, I would have been very, very happy. As it is, you know, I'm all right.
I mean, Guwon as well forced to pop it immediately does, you know, put a damper on who actually won that trade. But yeah, solid engage coming out here from Zhuo. I do think that it's just awesome not really being able to fully involve himself in the fight. Neither AD carry was really able to fully involve themselves in the fight. I think that if we had Photic there a little bit earlier and Assum there just a little bit sooner, hang on.
And it doesn't even save him? I'll give it to Jin here. That's a whole lot of CC.
Yeah. Combine that with the Ornn. No escape there, regardless of the flash for Photic. And NIP, even though they're down gold, this is what we wanted to see from them. We wanted to see them play with confidence, play up, look for these picks, and not get discouraged if the early to mid game looked a little bit dire. As although we anticipated NIP to look strong against IG, I do think that no one really felt like this series was going to be a stump. Both these teams had the capability of looking competitive, and I am optimistic that NIP can still challenge in these team fights if they can look for some of these picks on side lanes like they just did with Photic.
I think it should be pretty heartening to you and anyone at home that is rooting for NIP that they just managed to pick up their second dragon while we were in that replay as well.
Yes.
Hextech Soul actually going to be pretty significant for NIP's composition if they're able to pick it up, which is still a long way away. But second dragon at all, is a pretty big victory, in my humble opinion, for an NIP that was behind and that had just gone 1 for 2 plus an objective. Now they get a second objective, and if you think about it, that makes the whole play much better.
And it also just gives NIP a really good late game win con. We talked about the Soul early when IG got the first one, but now NIP, they take the next one, boom, you're at Soul Point. I feel like that combined with the ornaments that will, as we see Hoya's level 12, inevitably start flooding in very soon, make you much more capable of actually fighting back against Invictus Gaming, and will give you more excuses to actually start stuff out and potentially deny some of that trickle-in gold that IG have been getting over the course of this game. I think Rookie and Soboro have been so good at being able to navigate the side lanes and give gold over to themselves. You go for team fights, and suddenly they're forced to abandon the side lanes and look for those 5v5s, which gives you the opportunity to shut them down.
Yeah, right now, it's just a return to comfort for Soboro. He's decided to move back into the bot side. Teleport up for him. Realm Warp up for Rookie. They can spread out right now, and it's about NIP manufacturing these situations.
Soboro missed that. Well, he kind of hit it. He didn't hit the whole wave.
You know, I think it's time for one of those classic League of Legends debates. Did he miss it, or did the minions dodge it?
You know... Riot programming works in very strange ways, so you kind of have me there, Dia. That is a good question. I think I'll ask Drew. He might be asleep right now, but he'll wake up if I at him a lot.
Drew Levin wouldn't be asleep during this historic series.
You think he's not committed? He's not.
Well, the question is, which series is he watching? We've got 2 regions playing right now. It was 3 like an hour ago. It was 2 even like an hour ago, because I believe Secret Whales managed to secure their spot in first stand as well. So there really is a lot of action going on around the world as far as League of Legends esports goes. I think every single region in the world is having their grand finals, minus the LPL.
Yeah, I know that we'll be having some grand finals on the CBLOL or later today, not earlier today. That's not how time works. It's everybody's gearing up for stand, and you know what? We're getting there in our own time over here on the LPL.
Yeah.
And that honestly is pretty accelerated, as the rest of our split tends to be. There's a lot of volume packed into a very short amount of time, so. We'll be finding ourselves a champion of Split 1 pretty darn soon, as it is this one small stepping stone on the journey there. As it is worth noting that the winner of this series is not going to have an easier time as the tournament goes on. It's not like you win this and then all of a sudden get to breathe. After this, anyone who wins here plays against anyone's legend, which is tough.
An opponent.
Yeah.
But speaking of that acceleration, the game about to be very accelerated as Dragon up in about 10 seconds here. NIP, curiously, are really over-indexing onto this top side, looking for a pick onto Soboro to potentially shut down this Rumble yet again. But Soboro just backs on off, and IG do have a better foothold in the bot side river here. I feel like NIP just aren't really in a position to actually fight this, so I'm curious what they're going to do. There really aren't any alternatives around the map available. Hoya forced to flash.
Not in a position to defend the Dragon, also not in a position to defend their top laner, although maybe they decide, you know what, we lost the Dragon. We're going to do at least one of those things. Soboro gets pushed on right back into Hoya's arms, and this time, with some damage to back him up, all of a sudden Ornn's feeling a lot more confident. We're going to go 1 for Dragon.
Way on the back.
Still got Magnet Storm, but actually doesn't pull the trigger on it. Did end up using the bullet time, though, so the chances that IG go for a knockdown, drag-out team fight in the next minute or so, will we get that cooldown back? Pretty low.
Yeah, they are going to be looking for some kind of threat onto this turret. They will be able to turn that threat into an actual punch in the mouth, as they will claim their final tier 1 on NIP's side, and this just allows them to really open up the map more around these neutral objectives. Baron has been up for some time now, but still the threat of it does exist if you can get a pick and then transition it into pressure on that top side, certainly take that opportunity, but now Dragon Soul not going to be an immediate threat, at least for the next 9 or so minutes. IG managing to get their second of the game and tie up that Drake count 2-2.
I would personally, at this point, look at this game and qualify it as one where IG seem like they are the ones in charge. They are the ones running this game, deciding what happens. But it's not by that huge of a margin.
They're on
NIP
Baron.
NIP are still very much in this. It's about actually converting that to something right now, as we do get 2 teleports up towards the top side. Hoya has joined, as is Soboro. Notably, Care is walking his way up. And if you want to win a fight as NIP, Care needs to be there.
Rookie is at a really interesting position. Does have the
flanking.
Realm Warp available. This is a very interesting flank, though. They found Care.
And if you can assassinate Care, you can win the fight. That works even
my
better now as the
God.
bullet time goes right over the top of a wall and a Magnet Storm, securing a double kill for Soboro. Jwei collapses back on Care and manages to secure yet another kill for IG, as that is a 4-0 in the favor of IG, very swiftly manufactured. And the Baron that started it is now not even what they're looking for first.
And the teamfight comp finally gets to teamfight. IG link up. We had questions about how they would play the 5v5s, and they are answering it with flying colors here in game number 1. A 4-0, and the Baron, a foregone conclusion to end this play for themselves.
So the end of one play, start of another. Zhuo is here, and I'm rooting for him. But that's all that's going to happen with Zhuo's presence. If it had happened, whew, what a way. Let's take a look back at this fight, though.
Yeah, Jwei starting up the fight here, gets a pick onto Care, but the big thing is the pincer. Rookie coming around here, and then Jwei being able to find the second charge of the Cyclone. It really just kind of felt like IG managed to find all of their backline members, because Hoya was completely cut off. He was on the side. You saw him charging up that Orn Horn to maybe give NIP an opportunity to engage a fight on their terms, but he wasn't there to defend his squishier members, and they all crumble immediately at the high burst damage this IG comp gets through. And that is something we talked about in the draft as well. You have to protect Assum. You have to protect Care. These guys just feel like they're made of paper now.
For the next couple of minutes, that game that I had talked about as being a little bit more even, feeling like it wasn't really one team's or another's, is firmly in the control of IG. And IP can try and make a high-risk play to turn that around, or they can sit here and take it and see how much IG can get, whether that is enough to close things out later. Right now, it is just looking impossible to challenge, as IG are taking multiple turrets at the same time. They are inside your base, making themselves at home, grabbing a cup of coffee, sitting down on your couch, and being really disrespectful about the whole thing.
Yeah, these guys are just they're living in your base at this point with the Baron buff, looking to constrict their grip around NIP, tighten it by the second. They're gonna relieve a little bit of pressure for now, but that's only because Dragon is up in just a couple of seconds, and IG want to put themselves at soul point.
My gosh, IG are flushing the wet wipes. This is ridiculous. And they're gonna get Dragon.
This is such a nice thing to see from IG. We talked about it in the pre-show, Dia, but this is a squad who, you know, mostly looks good in the early game, can sometimes look good in the mid and late game, but never feels like they look good in all three. They'll get a nice point in the game, they'll have flashes of brilliance in a match, but being able to keep that is really the big question, though. This game, they have answered that question. They were dominant from start to what is soon to be finish, as they are now 6.8k gold ahead, soul point complete, and NIP just feel like they are at IG's mercy.
And it has truly come down to one big difference. I suppose I should say two big differences, and that is the mid-jungle synergy. Jwei and Rookie have worked so much better together than we saw them work the entirety of their series in Knight's Road against NIP. These two have been holding hands since, I'm going to say, minute 4, and making plays across the map, whether that be just dipping into a lack of vision placed by NIP, or fully realm warping up to the top side to harass Hoya even more. They've exerted a lot of map control. They found an engage in the mid game that led to a successful team fight. IG's success is coming squarely off the shoulders of those two, and it may very well again as Jwei searches for another engage and forces the ultimate out of Guwon.
Yep, not going to be able to find anything though. Both teams going to limp away, but still the problem of these waves is hitting NIP in the face. That inhibitor down in mid. Right now, IG really just want to try and focus their attention onto these side lanes so that they can get that inhib that is exposed on the bot side and that turret that is still standing on the top side. But I'm glad that you mentioned the mid jungle. I think that that has been a very big staple of IG all throughout their time here in Winter Split. It's one thing that we looked at to be a defining characteristic of their style, especially with the other members of IG being new to the organization. But I want to highlight and give flowers over to Soboro as well. I think that he navigated this 1v1 against Hoya really, really nicely and was great in the side lanes as this Rumble. We can see that there is an almost 3,000 gold lead, biggest in the game for him right now. And this was kind of the player that everyone had question marks on coming in from the LCKCL. How would he fare up against the competition here in the LPL? And so far, been a little bit underwhelming, but I do think that IG have had that confidence to allow him for going on picks like the Rumble, going on picks like the Renekton, and even when it hasn't looked successful, they say, it's okay, you try again, you practice what you're good at, and we're in it for the long road.
We're seeing a pretty good example as we moved towards the bottom half of the map there as to how this matchup ages for the Rumble Ornn. Ornn doesn't have to worry about dying solo to Rumble as much. I want to say it all, but you never know what happens in the LPL. But he doesn't really get a say as to where the wave is placed and what Rumble gets to do. He has to just meet the wave wherever Rumble decides to leave it. And right now it's up to Soboro to navigate that matchup and really play the macro much better, because the micro of the lane isn't going to matter nearly as much as it did for the first, say, 15 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely. The micro, though, not going to be very relevant in taking the Baron, which is up in just a couple of seconds here. IG have nigh full control of the top side here on the map, so NIP really going to find it difficult to enter into this part without sacrificing a bunch of health bars. Seems like they've come prepared, though. As you can see, the Guardian Angel is actually there for Guwon, so he has that little bit of safety. The Zhuo has to be very careful not to misstep here. It's just a lockdown from IG. Even when you have someone as slippery as Rakan, you've got to be cautious of a Rune Prison just rooting you in place and the damage from IG coming through and giving them a numbers advantage.
Nice of the observers to highlight that NIP had a little bit of vision on Photic's recall there, which lets them walk into the top side jungle and play some more vision, something that they otherwise would have been a little worried about doing because maybe a team fight breaks out that doesn't go their way. All of a sudden the AD carry's missing and you go, you know what? It's fine. We can walk in, just make sure that we can see a little bit for the team fight that is inevitable. It might even be starting off right now as Guwon has actually moved forward onto Jwei, forcing the clone out.
Soul is here. Baron is here. I'm wondering if NIP, if they're uncomfortable looking for a play on this bot side, if they maybe just transition that into a top lane objective. Rookie does have that realm warp to respond, though, so I think NIP are forced to look for a fight.
NIP are kind of letting Rookie have a flank. They're manufacturing one for him, and as Photic flashes away from the Call of Forge God, he makes it almost all the way out. Zhuo is in Narnia chasing after him, and that lets NIP turn things around entirely, looking for the fight, sending Guwon into the backline, but way too late. IG are the ones coming out on top of it as Jwei starts up the dragon and a realm warp forward for the rest of IG. Look for care. Jwei and Rookie seeking him in the jungle, and Zhuo playing League of Legends.
Yep. gets to witness it, unlike so many of his other teammates, as most of the NIP squad do go down in the team fight. And now IG, soul complete. They should have no problem just saying, hey, Baron's up. We don't really have any waves capable of giving us an opportunity to end the game right now. Let's just go for the confident. Let's just go for the confident play. Let's go for the one that is consistent. And yeah, that definitely is taking this top side objective. IG clinical here in game number 1, Dia.
It's a huge overreach by Zhuo. I mean, we'll take a look at this team fight again, but NIP just extend way too far, looking for an AD carry who's gone.
Yeah, I mean, Photic does a really good job at dodging the initial attempts of CC being thrown his way, and yeah, Zhuo forced to overextend also does mean that Jwei has a really easy time being able to get into the backline because they are so exposed. Hoya really can't stop the flank coming through from IG, and all of those backline members just go down before really having an opportunity to dump their damage down.
Jwei doing a great job in that fight as well. We talked about the balance of offense and defense that Wukong can bring to the table, and he really showcases that, being able to use one Cyclone to start the fight and another to make sure that his carries stay alive, making sure that Photic can lay out a bit of damage on the overextended Guwon. Something that NIP will have a difficult time doing again, not just because it's hard to do, hard to manufacture, a fight that NIP will take, but because even if they do manufacture a fight that looks semi-decent, they are playing into a pretty large gold lead. Engage does go out onto Jwei, popping his Guardian Angel. Let's see how well this can go for NIP as they've got Care in the backline. Bullet time over the top and over the tower. Does keep things pretty firmly in IG's hands, and that is only continuing as Soboro roasts NIP alive. Double kill for the Rumble, and we're going to make it perhaps a triple. Ends up being taken away from him. IG remain firmly in control as NIP look for an ill-advised fight and come up empty-handed, maybe even losing the game here, Quax.
Yeah, I mean, they've got a wave. The death timers are really long at this point in the game.
Yeah.
IG, the first to strike in this series, a dominant showcase and a statement for the future of this best of 5.
Well. I mean, you got to make the play, I suppose, but NIP do take a fight that they should lose, and then they lose it, and then they lose the game, and that's a tough way to go in game number 1. However, it is important that them going in game number 1 was coming for a little while. This was a game that IG were pretty well in control of, and the fact that it's over might not be the worst thing for NIP and their fans, as game 2 is perhaps a more realistic possibility than pulling game 1 back.
Yeah, and it just kind of felt like it started right from the get-go. I think that Jwei, with that just really early intelligent pathing decision to say, hey, I can look for a topside crab fight because I have the prio in my solo lanes. That kind of energy, that kind of cerebral play coming through from Rookie and Jwei is what I think carried Invictus Gaming in the early game and allowed them to carry that torch into the mid to late game where everyone started grouping up. Overall, it was just a very solid macro decision game from the mid jungle of Invictus Gaming, and a good solid micro game from Soboro on the top lane as well. I think definitely getting the better of Hoya, which was a staple of the first time these two teams met. We didn't really mention it, but I think that Hoya definitely was the better man the last time that IG played NIP, and so maybe a little bit of revenge coming through there from Soboro because he definitely was better in the 1v1.
Yeah, this was a fantastic game from Soboro, is where I'm going to classify this under. He ran the solo lane, he turned that into some really good team fights as well, and once he got a lead, didn't really overextend or misexecute on Rumble in ways that we have seen a lot of top laners globally just tend to do. You feel strong, you play weird, you play awkward, disjointed with the team. That wasn't happening here. We saw a lot of Soboro grouping up with the team and adding his damage to what was already a terrifying team fight. I would say that this game, and I know this is going to sound weird and it's going to sound like I'm not really making a point here, but I want to say it, so I'm going to do it because I'm holding this microphone. This felt like a game to me where IG's comms were largely, I can do this, I can do this. Now, obviously, I don't speak any Mandarin at all, and I couldn't hear any of their comms. But given the way that they were playing, I was feeling a lot of volunteering. We can do this. We can make this play.
Yeah.
Coming out of every single individual player on IG, and that is a very different attitude than I saw them with in their last 2 series.
Yeah, I think that the willingness to be able to just play the map was a really big contributing factor to IG, just even in the small things too, right? Like, one thing that really stuck out to me was every time Rookie left the lane to go for one of his famous realm warps that we now see in the highlights of this match, Jwei was saying, oh, that's awesome. You go do that. I'll cover for your mid wave, and by the time you get back, this will be sitting right here. He was delivering the minions on a silver platter practically with like a nice satin pillow to go along with it. And so IG just better at playing the map. I think really going for these cross map plays whilst also minimizing the risk of NIP being able to respond is what created such a massive gold gap. Once we inevitably started coasting into these team fights. It's what led to results like this, where IG, even when the setup looked a little bit shaky, even when they weren't the first ones to the neutrals, they were able to fight back, bounce back, because they just had more gold than the enemy team, and they knew how to use it.
Yeah, and so sometimes that was, as I'm very fond of saying, a blunt force instrument. IG knew that a lot of times, especially with something like Wukong to start the fight, which is very difficult to punish, they could just run at you and force you to make a decision. We saw that really showcased here, especially with Rookie on a flank. NIP have to make the decision to fight or back off, and they aren't really able to make either effectively, resulting in an IG wash in this fight.
And it just felt like from the NIP side, the team fights were just incredibly messy. I mean, we're going to see it later on, but like literally right here, but Zhuo was over chasing for a lot of these picks, and also over chasing in some instances, panicking to try and save Assum, who got flanked a lot of times, probably more than IG had any right having. But that on top of, I think, Hoya mispositioning as the tank of this team. He was often on the side looking for engages instead of at the front, being able to not only engage but guard his backline as well. A lot of positioning errors coming through here from NIP, particularly their frontline and their engagers. And so I do think going into game number 2, we need to see an attitude shift around these 5v5s, because Dia, if you'll remember, that's what NIP were known for. Before all of the Varuses and the Kianas and everything that made them really fun to look at in the draft, this was just a team fight team. They said, hey, let's 5v5. That's our trick. That was our only trick in the book for a while. We need to see them return, brush up on